Well, that's
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the special meeting of the Herkimer County Industrial Development Agency Board of Directors meeting. We start with a pledge. Kate, want to start us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll, please. Stacy.
Okay, Scarano,
Here.
Albrecht,
Here.
Toulouse, Scarano,
Here.
Ricky.
Here.
Warren Zach. Correcty. We have four for quorum.
Sure. Item number 3, we'll move on to, by the way. Ann. Spend the day here. Ann's gonna be a little bit late, so she'll be here.
Okay.
We have HRP Associate Brownfield Review item for item number 3. Tom Sedgwick's here to discuss potential contract with them. And John, you want to do an introduction?
Sure. Tom has been working with us from the beginning of our brownfield assessment grant. We were very successful in that. From that grant, we've been working with EPA and several other projects. Tom was instrumental in getting the administrator here to look at the dual fold and do the review, which many of you attended as well. After reviewing what our discussions have been with Ames True Temper and their consultants, and reviewing, sending it over to HRP to get their input on it. I requested at our last board meeting that we hire HRP to consult us on this from beginning to development, and you all requested that we have Tom in. I don't feel that my expertise is significant or sufficient enough to make all of those decisions without some support. We would still have to look towards Tony for some legalese. And if Tony didn't feel as though he was up to speed on the brownfield, as in the past, he's recommended other as well. So I think with that, maybe we can start out with 2. I don't know, Corey wasn't at the last meeting, but the other board members were. And I did know Ann had some questions. Unfortunately, Dave Cluse, who cannot attend today. So maybe Mike. Give Mike a second to come up here. So our brownfield assessments grant, we're at the end of that process now. And so we're good moving ahead with that, closing out that grant. We are applying again. You all voted on that too. So we would apply again for $600,000 this time through a couple of working in conjunction with Dollarville and Ilion on that. Tom was also instrumental in helping us secure the attorney's firm that's going after Unisys as well, to get some cleanup for the money at the dual fault. Mike. So we're just starting out with Tom, Mike from HRP, who you wanted as a board to come in to talk about the Ames Union Tool site and work with him as a consultant. So if you want to fire off, you can.
Would you like me to do a quick review of our understanding of the site and what we see needs to?
How about just a real quick?
Who's HRP? Who am I?
Yeah, 30-second.
Okay, HRP is an environmental civil engineering firm, been in business since '82, about 130 employees, mainly up and down the East Coast. Our main focus is assisting corporations, municipalities, whatever it might be, with regards to understanding environmental issues. And one of our specialties is brownfields. Right now, we have a $50 million contract with DEC, where we work with DEC on the state Superfund list. So we go and investigate sites and develop remediation plans. I mean, that's really our biggest thing on the resume in that area, as well as we assist industrial clients with permitting, sustainability, whatever they might need in the environmental arena. As far as myself, I've been around for quite a while. I've been an HRP employee for, I think, 32 years or so. I have a PE and PG. Been doing it for quite a while. My job is always to understand what the client needs and make sure we get it done for them.
Can you tell us what you did with corrections over the past 2 years? Didn't you get hired by your?
We also work with the Department of Corrections. We've been doing that for about 10, 15 years, I'd say. We've gotten 5 consecutive contracts. So it's technically with the Office of General Services. And we really address all the environmental issues with corrections. Whenever they put a boiler and get the permit, whenever they take out a tank, we address that. We actually do their dam work, their dam inspections, do wastewater treatment design.
What about with PPE? Didn't you help them out with something there that had to do with the hand sanitizer?
Well, originally when COVID hit, they wanted to make hand sanitizer. And as you know, you can't do anything without a permit or approval from somebody. So we helped them get the approvals for the installations of the tanks to store the products. So they more or less brought it in trucks, and then they put it in smaller bottles, is really what it was. But like anything, they had to get permits from different agencies to do it. Yeah, so we did a lot of work with OGS. We had 2 different contracts with them. We also have a contract at Connecticut DOT, and we work with a lot of large corporations like Kraft Foods, Mondelez, Stanley Black and Decker, Henkel. I can go down a whole list if you want.
Oh, that's good.
So, so I guess with regards to the union, I gotta get the proper name, Union Fork and Tool site. So the site has been remediated. But when one says the site's been remediated or cleaned up, we use the terms interchangeably. It means a lot of different things. So what has been done at the site, they've arguably capped it. So the plan at the site was to eliminate the potential for human contact with the contaminants. So the contaminants are all on the ground and more or less use the existing concrete foundations as a cap, and then brought more material on site to cap it. So it's widely used these days because, for argument's sake, it's probably one of the least expensive ways to remediate a site. But with that come conditions.
Did they remove any soil as well?
No,
No.
I don't believe so. If anything, it was marginal. But really, the site's been capped. So I mean, want me to pass these out to a few people?
Sure, if you want to, you know.
I don't know if I have enough copies, but you're close enough, you can share. So for argument's sake, the white areas had no contamination. The green blob in the middle was not remediated. It's about a 3-acre portion that still has contamination.
Why?
Why was that?
Don't know.
I think
So
there's where the trees are.
there's trees there, yes. There was an argument made to leave that there. I mean, I was not involved. So when the remediation is done, there's a negotiation with the DEC. I was not involved with that. For whatever reason, they agreed to allow that to be left. Okay. The areas that are, it's all weird colors. What is it? Teal, fuchsia, green. Maybe it'll help me with the colors, but I have no idea. Teal, fuchsia, and green, we'll say. Those are areas that have been capped. Okay. So for argument's sake, unless you want to remediate it, you stay out of the green area. Every other area of this site can be developed. Okay. But there's conditions. The site can only be used for industrial commercial uses, which really means you can't have uses where a person's on site for 24 hours a day. Okay, so you can build warehouses, you can build whatever industrial site you
Data
want.
center.
Data centers, but you can't build apartments. You can't build single family homes. Well, technically you still can, but you have to go back to the DEC, renegotiate, and clean it up more and be more expensive, okay? So for now, the way it's set up is you can develop the site for industrial and commercial uses.
You said no single family house.
Correct. So you can't have people that live there. Apartments, single family housing.
To me is one house, but you can't have a duplex or an apartment.
No house.
No,
I
no,
understand. I just
no,
wanna
no.
make sure
I mean, now you get into the finer details. Correct. You cannot do that. You
it's a
cannot,
single family.
yeah, you cannot have residences there. People can't live there. Okay.
Sorry.
But it can be used for industrial and commercial purposes. But what you have to do is, with this site cleanup came a site management plan. And what the site management plan says, if you're going to go develop this site and you're going to touch any of the soil, it has to be properly managed. So the soil, for argument's sake, has to be removed and disposed of offsite. You have to, all of the workers have to have proper precautions. You have to do site monitoring, meaning they call them camps, community, I don't know what a camp is, but it means you have to have monitoring. You have to monitor particulates on the site. You have to monitor for VOCs when the construction is getting done in those areas that are impacted. So if you're gonna bring a utility, you're gonna build in the, we'll say this corner here, right? You're gonna build a slab on grade building and bring utilities to it. Those utility trenches, any soil with that has to be disposed of offsite properly. You have to monitor the area, monitor for VOC releases, particulate matter releases, and then wherever you dig for a foundation. Okay, so there's going to be costs associated with it. Really nothing significant, but it's a consideration. The other thing to keep in mind is down in this corner, there were soil vapors. So it's possible you'd have to put a sub-slab depressurization system down in this corner. Because you can't have, if you have, there's evidence of contaminated soil gas, you can't have it entering the building.
Is it like a radon thing?
Yes, you put more or less a vapor barrier to prevent it from getting in and a radon system.
That is in jail.
Right, and it's very common. I mean, this type of development is very common these days.
Tom, what about the concrete? Say somebody comes in, they want the concrete moved. Obviously,
There's a possibility of issues in that area with geotech. You just want to make sure that it's, you know, it's going to meet the need. So in that area, instead of building a building, you put parking lot, for example, because your geotech isn't as significant.
if concrete has to stay.
Oh, I'm sorry. So with the concrete, no, you can, any of these features you can move, remove, or use.
But the contamination will be,
The contamination is
Maybe.
under that.
yeah, maybe, so you have to remediate that.
Right, so it's possible
Cap
that,
it, forget it.
yeah, so it's possible you can build on top of that concrete.
With
And-
another slab, replace it with
Yeah,
another
just
slab.
build on top and you don't have to worry about the site management plan, for argument's sake.
Or if you had to remove it, you could
You could,
put the plan in place.
yes.
But the concrete itself is not gonna be contaminated, most likely.
I'm
It's
worried
gonna
about
be-
underneath.
Yeah,
Yeah, underneath it is. Doesn't mean every single spot is contaminated, but it means in general, if you were 7 out of 10 holes, you're gonna run into contamination, for argument's sake, okay? There's one other area here that has various fill, like the purple areas, there's block in there. So if you were to develop that area for a building, you might want to do geotech just to make sure it's suitable. The easier thing to do if you put a parking lot there. That's not, the geotech is not as much of a concern. So
See, really from the pink over, you've got issues. I mean, you say you got to build a parking lot, which
Well,
is.
well, I'm not saying you have to build a parking lot, it's just that you'd have to be aware of the fact that there's some brick or rubble there that might affect a building being installed there.
so if you're doing geotech, you're usually just checking out the corners or somewhere in line of that structure. So where this lays out, they might not matter at all. You know, if we put in a data center, it isn't gonna matter. If we put in a high manufacturing facility that has giant presses in it.
Yeah, with
it's gonna
vibrations,
matter.
it's gonna matter more.
So you have to look at what can go in those areas, and then the companies that come in, even like in Pepsi and Fountainhead's case, Pepsi so far did have to bring some stone in, but not a lot. And when we do some, and so will Wilcor in the front, and probably Colucci on that corner lot is gonna have to bring a little bit of some hard substance in. But that's not uncommon for these guys. What the attraction is, what we all know is to this site, it's all the utilities that are there,
Right.
the cheap power and the dual high-speed fiber.
Well,
Yes.
at this point too, the pink area and the green area, we've got some. The majority of that area has got some issues.
Well, no, the pink area is not, doesn't, we can build on the pink area.
Well, yeah, so any area that, for argument's sake, has a color has an issue, but they're all manageable because it's just that when you take out soil, you have to manage it. So if you're gonna do a slab on grade, you just have to worry about the areas where the foundation is dug in.
Maybe
So-
get up.
So you have to just be thoughtful of what you're doing where to minimize impacts. I mean, in this construction on these types of sites is becoming very common now.
They aren't issues that are not manageable.
Oh, they're definitely manageable. They're definitely becoming very common.
The only one I feel as though we'd stay away from on that whole
Hi.
property
Tom says, look, how are you?
would be the green area. The-
Yes, the green area.
And
stay
they're
away
calling
from.
it green too, because they wanted to leave some trees and things on the site. And that's the treed area that you can see right from,
Would you do put a fence up around it,
Yep.
say off limits?
or you wouldn't really have to if we didn't build on it. I mean, we're gonna have control of the site.
Or clean it up?
If you want to clean it up, you can clean it up, and really the thing to do would be, once again, is cap it. I mean, so what you'd want to do is, depending upon, so when someone comes in for the development on the site, they're all, not only are they going to look where they're going to locate the building, but they're going to have to scratch their head a little bit to minimize the impact.
I think that when part of their process, because I met with the consultants, was that they wanted some green space on that site,
Okay,
forever green. They wanted some trees and things, and that's what they worked out. It's underground.
Tom, so it sounds like you worked on similar
Oh, yeah.
projects like this. Could you point to one, is there one around here in the Mohawk Valley or in upstate New York where it had contaminants and it was capped and it was in some form of remediation, but
I'm thinking now,
developers still were willing to invest in the property and
Up in Glens Falls at the Price Chopper site,
oh, yeah, I mean, well, actually, Fort Edwards,
Fort Edward, I'm sorry.
Risky Boulevard,
yeah, I mean, it's,
the storage.
So in Fort Edward, there was a huge GE, what do they make there? One of those
Transformers.
And it was contaminated with, I believe.
Right, you also?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So
That
they
was capped.
converted that to a grocery store.
Yeah, it's very
So
common.
it's still
now.
marketable.
Yes, yes,
To a high degree.
You can't do 24/7, but if the factory comes in there with 3 shifts,
that's fine,
that's fine.
because the purpose is not there, the purpose of the building is not, they're not living there, so that's fine. So what would happen is, ideally, if you were to purchase a site, you would want to negotiate a deal with the DEC that holds you harmless, which is very common now.
Yeah.
So you would negotiate with the DEC because they want to encourage development. So you would negotiate a deal with the DEC that would hold you harmless, and what they would say is, so long as you honor the site management plan, you're good to go. That agreement would typically be transferable, so that if you parceled out the site and sold it to someone else, they could work under the same agreement. And that's so that what you want to do is leave it that Ames True Temper is the liable party. You're just there for the development phase.
And
That
there will
is-
always be there's no way they can get out of that unless something.
Correct. Now I'm starting to think we're working on a site like this in Latham, where we just negotiated one of these deals. It was like, this was contaminated, it was a former dry cleaner. It's gonna get capped. There's some monitoring wells on the site. The developer with us negotiated the deal with the DEC to hold them harmless. They're gonna pass it through to a gas station, convenience store for development. And the developer becomes the conduit to make that possible, and the agreement flows with the deals.
Question. You said we have to adhere to the management plan.
Correct.
If we buy this and we do nothing, a yearly cost for the management plan would cost us what, 0 until we do something?
So what's gonna happen is, so let's say, and these are, just to give you an idea, to get you through this portion of the deal, you're looking at $10,000 to $15,000, because technically you have to do a phase 1 within 6 months of the purchase of the site. Then we're gonna have to negotiate a deal with the DEC.
Why is phase 1 after the purchase of that?
No, I'm sorry, correct. Good thing we have a lawyer here.
He's here.
You're right, it's
I was
before the
gonna say-
purchase. It's before the purchase, sorry. It's before the purchase, within 6 months of the purchase, because then you get the innocent landholder provisions, and you negotiate the deal with the DEC.
What about the EPA?
Good point, but the EPA is,
There's no risk.
they're silent to this. They're defaulting to the DEC because the EPA doesn't have it's not a Superfund site. They're not interested in it, for argument's sake. Okay.
So is the phase one recommendations going to drive the management plan?
No, the management plan already exists because
Already
it was
exists.
part of the remediation agreement that's been put into place.
Okay,
I'm not talking about your cost. We're gonna.
So what's gonna happen is
like probably
there is,
monitoring
you have to do
wells,
an
right?
annual inspection of all the caps. Which is really, you have to have a PE walk around and say there's no cracks, there's no, nothing significant. You're looking at like $2,500 a year. And they, a simple report's got to get filed, just a letter saying everything's fine.
For free.
Or it's possible that there's been some erosion on a site, or there's a crack in the pavement, say, the report says, hey, you gotta fix that area. And you gotta,
What about, because I'm running into this now, we've had major flooding and erosion events this year that is quadrupled some monitoring situations.
it is possible, yes. I mean, that's why you want to make sure it's maintains its integrity.
This isn't an older floodplain, but not current. We haven't had a flood down there in decades.
I'm just trying to
But
understand.
the
the
other thing
process.
is too, what we want to keep in mind is the village wants to partner with us on this. I've already talked to them. They will agree to monitor everything that needs to be done. Forever, he'll sign any type of agreement. What's the matter?
I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So you
I'm
gotta
attentive.
look-
Active
no,
listening.
You gotta look
I'm
at,
actively
Wheels are turning. Come on.
I don't, yes, because they're gonna benefit from all the property tax that they're gonna receive on this, especially if it's 2,500, he's not gonna, or even if it's 5. We will discuss that with them. They'll take over any road. If we need to put some roads through there, they'll do those. They'll handle the maintenance. We won't own it again. It's another industrial park for us.
From my perspective, we talk about monitoring. Is the monitor a professional engineer or somebody, or is the village highway superintendent somebody that's qualified?
As long as they're a PE.
It's gotta be PE.
So they'll have to hire.
Well, the town could, as long as they have a PE.
Yeah,
It's
it'll
gotta be a
in the
PE.
village. They don't have a E. PE.
And then
Wow,
there's gonna be groundwater monitoring. Every 5 years, there's gotta be groundwater monitoring done. For argument forever, unless, so once every 5 years, it's gonna be a cost of about $5,000, once every 5 years to monitor the groundwater. It is possible,
Through those wells that are.
correct. It is possible down the road that you could say, we haven't detected anything, we wanna close out the monitoring program. It is possible. Really,
I mean,
No, none, nothing there. There's only two structures up. One is a very large smokestack that has the initials in brick. And the other one's a silo that they just didn't tear down, which I have no idea why.
the fact that they have municipal water, does
that,
that lessens the monitoring?
well, because that is, I should have pointed out, that's also a condition. You can't drink the water, you can't put wells on site, things of that
Can't have
nature.
gardens.
Can't have gardens.
Kids eat dirt.
It's,
From a well. and
They
you're
do.
there,
You're gonna
it's
find
like,
that out, man.
it's all, I mean, it's all very, so those are really the only fixed cost per se is the site inspection and the groundwater monitoring.
So maximum maybe $5,000 a year, we could say that we would.
Yes. Yes.
In perpetuity.
Now, when you get into development costs, you are gonna have some environmental costs, but that can get minimized through design.
And a lot of it could go back to the developer. And we haven't had a conversation with the DEC. Let's talk about with dual-fold, they usually charge a fee to DEC to do the administration. We got them to waive that. We haven't even broached anything with them on that. Tom has great relationships with the DEC here, so we'll see.
Well, if I may, this is gonna be sort of a different agreement, so everything, there's no oversight fees from the DEC on this. It's just gonna be agreement that goes into the, whatever becomes part of the land records, filed with
The
the
deed
county.
and everything.
The deed, yeah, the deed and everything like that. So everyone knows that with this piece of property, you need to do these things and here's the agreements.
Just like dealing with the Army Corps.
Yeah,
There would be a
just like
declaration.
So the key here, in my opinion, is you wanna make sure the liability stays within true temper.
Yeah.
And through this agreement, we can negotiate with the DEC, we can maintain that. And I mean, I'm not gonna say it's just a simple agreement. We gotta make sure all the terms are in there and everyone can live with them. And then that agreement can get passed on to others if they purchase the
We
site.
go belly up with it. True temper
Um,
closes tomorrow.
They probably have to have something in escrow to cover all.
Well,
this.
the reality is the site's already been remediated. So there's not a lot of liability associated with it.
The only liability I see is not far from there are the village wells. So we worry about the migration of anything over because they're closer to the river, so everything migrates to the water.
So I think what would happen is, back to your question, is that I believe that liability, so this site is in the States Inactive Program, Hazardous Waste Inactive Program. Your agreement would kind of like, if any issues come up, you kind of step back and boom, it goes to Union Tool. If they're not around, it goes back to the state because they have the funding. And this is part of our contract. They have the funding to address issues like that. So if an issue appears in the ground, drinking water wells, the state of New York would rise up to address that.
Unless we contributed to the release,
Pardon?
unless we contribute or.
Correct,
release.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
we won't have anything that would do that on this site. Any new businesses could not
Correct.
produce something that could contribute to that.
Right, so that's the way, that would be the wording.
Slab on grade, the type of product that they did. We wouldn't do oil refineries here, you know, though I'd like one in the middle.
Would the state have to agree to the terms of the release of liability? Is that like a done thing where they would automatically agree? Or is there an opportunity where you would consult for us and they may not agree to the release of liability?
Not following your question exactly.
But you keep saying, you know, it would fall back to Ames, or the liability would fall back to the state, and that you would negotiate that in the contract.
Well, what would happen is you would negotiate a bona fide purchaser agreement. And that, the purpose of that is really to allow development of sites that are contaminated. And it takes a liability and keeps it with the current owner of the site, which would be Union
I
Tool.
guess in the negotiation, is there a chance that they may say, no, we do not agree to that?
There's always a
Yeah,
chance, but it's
then we walk
unlikely.
away.
Yeah, it's unlikely.
Let's be
Because-
honest, we're not looking to pay a dime for this site. We're looking just to acquire the site at no cost.
If we don't do it, who's gonna do it?
Nobody.
You know, nobody. So the state's
Sitting
looking
there
at it,
for
hey,
years.
listen, we want to be partners with you. I think it's a no-brainer for them.
So it's a provision that the DEC's come up with to allow developers to go to a site
Right.
to encourage the development of it, because otherwise everything's frozen. No one will touch any of these sites. And they've carved out these deals, and actually it started at the federal level, whereas you can get these agreements at the federal level for the federal sites, and it's drifted down to the states, and they've adopted it also. So I mean, it's possible to say, no, we don't, the DEC doesn't want to do it, but that's just, you know, a discussion first with a temperature check. I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure they'll say, yeah,
Right.
because they want
They want
development.
development.
They want development.
Isn't the answer, if they don't consent, we don't buy it, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, so your purchase, your transfer, whatever it is contingent upon getting the agreement from the DEC.
We would be simply crazy to not have this in place. Right. Would make no sense.
As far as the water issue, the village has got a pretty good system to take care of whatever contaminant. 'Cause I was at that meeting, and DEC said that, you know, they call it it's a water stripper, and it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll take care. But the other good thing is, we're working on a water line, a transmission line that the village is interested in. You can put a tap there in case down the road. So if there's any type of contaminant that does migrate towards the well, and the DEC says, the health department, turn the tap on and you get clean water from an alternate source.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the water system there, but I gotta believe that water system's probably been there for a while.
Forever.
And
They got a ton of
they've
water.
been sampling that at least every quarter, if not
Oh,
every
yes.
month.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't made it there yet, it's unlikely that it will. That's just a general
Yeah, no,
comment.
they're happy with.
Because this facility was there a long time ago, so you're talking years and years and years.
I have a question, Tom, and we had talked about it in our last meeting, so I apologize if it was already covered. So as it relates to, you know, Union Tools was there, obviously burnt, demolished. We were talking that part of the property might be filled in with some of the old blocks and bricks, right, et cetera. So that being said, you know, say everything with the environmental worked out, everything's negotiated just fine, the developer's interested. How do we know that they can, you know, put down a slab without having to perhaps spend an extra $1 million to take out maybe the urban fill layers of the, you know what I mean? To develop here, how do we know that?
Very good point. So there is a portion, and I gotta find it now. It's the I believe it's the purple areas have the brick
Yeah.
debris.
So all those smaller purple areas.
I believe it's all
come
just the
out.
smaller purple areas. So really, it's a matter of,
Oh, so that's minimal.
And if geotech, like we were talking earlier, maybe that's just the parking lot. Maybe that's the center of the building where there's not the manufacturing going on it. You know, it's all how it's laid out.
I just know that it's difficult to,
Correct.
put down that. But I mean, if it's really indicative of the purple here, I mean, that's pretty minimal, I
Correct.
would think. So it's not, I'm thinking if you were to say, well, it's this half of the property, I mean, that
no,
could be an
it
extra
appears, it's
couple $1 million
it's
to
minimal.
develop.
It's minimal. So what you'd want to do is just get an understanding, because there's boring logs for those areas. So you can look at those to see what's there exactly, and then depending upon what the building's going to be, you might want to do a geotech there to establish the proper footings for those areas.
So the footings would handle the whole
Right.
rest of the building, so we wouldn't be as worried.
Right, and then,
And this is a pretty narrow property. So-
Yeah,
So we have to just look at on what type of structures we could either line them up along one side street, what we could best do here to fit in. We don't want to really have a 200,000 square foot warehouse come in and it's a long, shape that doesn't really fit into the area.
well, and considering if the purple areas are and however you want to put a demarcation layer or whatever, I mean, that looks like it would be minimal
Correct.
to take that out and
To
replace
abate,
it. So I ran
No,
into a couple other projects where that had this.
Understood,
$1 million
understood.
to
Yeah,
it.
and it's just,
So if you find that out.
it's a matter of overlaying the development in the most prudent areas to minimize any additional costs.
Right.
So in the areas like that, you probably want to put the parking lot instead of a building because your geotech needs are much more minimal. So it's
Yeah.
just, there's just another layer of thought about where you're going to lay it out considering the site conditions.
Right. And that due diligence piece is just, I guess that was important in our initial meeting to make sure that that when we do, or if we do acquire it, it can carry forward to a
Right.
project that comes to fruition.
And then just understand, I don't know if you're here for this, but this area in the, the red area in the corner here, that's gonna have soil vapor, so some type of vapor barrier, like the radon type system.
Oh, right.
And the green is trees, and I think until we dig in deeper, I think they said forever green or something, one area of it.
We do have, I sit on the solid waste authority board, and we do have a program. It's, and John and I have talked about this, we met with Bill Rabia, and our board did pass it. Any project that we may have, that will allow us a certain tonnage, I think it's 5,000 tons. Not a lot, but we could get rid of some of this stuff for certain projects. Project come in, you want to get rid of the slab, and that would even be, we use that as hard fill at the solid.
But
So
is
they
the
may not
slab
even,
contaminated?
I'd have to double, I don't believe so, because
No, I
it's
don't
used
either.
as
Yeah, so-
cover,
right, we could use it.
but
as
I'd have to double check that, but I believe it's part of the cover.
We do use it to cover.
But I don't think we would have to remove it to there. I think we would go to a hard fill site. It doesn't have to be,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
not
just saying
contaminated.
there's an option for
Yeah.
us to dump it at a reduced cost or no cost.
So my recommendation to the board is that we hire a HRP group to move ahead with the process, not take over the property till we get results back from phase one in conversations with the Union Ames True Temper.
At a cost though.
At a not to exceed number of,
I'd say $15,000 initially.
A phase one in there.
that's
Phase
in
one,
there,
and then agreements
fees,
with the DEC.
Yeah, 15,000.
So not to exceed
can go quick.
15,000.
Any questions for Tom?
But Tony, are you a willing participant in this?
I am very intrigued and I'm absolutely an active participant.
Good.
I
That's
guess,
what I wanted to
the
hear.
answer we have to get is from the DEC, if they'll hold us harmless, they hold us harmless, it should be a no brainer.
John, I'm curious, have you had, like site seekers look at this site and be interested?
Oh, very much so.
Okay, so there is interest in putting participation.
There's a
into-
huge interest in this. And if we didn't go with it just as a blank slate, we've had interest in doing some spec warehousing. Where I think we could put up several 30 to 50,000 square foot warehouses here and do very well with them. That Muni power and the dual high speed fiber though, I would really like to try to get, do more with data center and something a little higher paying. When I say data center, I don't mean credit card companies, either banks or somebody who's doing artificial intelligence on their projects or something along those lines.
Just a big foot.
No, it can be there, data center. It's not 24, it's not living. The only thing that can't be there
But
is
even
living.
if it is 24/7, if the shift.
Yeah,
No,
it's
yes,
living.
yes,
So
yes.
it's
It's a
living.
matter of living.
It's
Can't
living.
have people living there.
I mean, we'll tell them they can't have
This
any
is a
other people.
professional
They'll
service.
sleep
so we
over
don't have
at work.
to-
Yeah.
No, we don't need to bid it out. And it's definitely specific to this project.
Is there a motion? And second, Cory, any further discussion? Okay, Bri? Any opposed?
Thank you.
I will set up a call with Ames and yourself and whoever else from your team.
And Mark Wright.
Mark, right, okay. Do you want to be a part of that call?
I'd be curious.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
then, and then if any board member does too, but we'll most likely set up a Zoom meeting since most of them are from Jersey. They're consultants from California, so
Okay.
we'll work from there.
Any other questions at all? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time. Look forward to hearing from you. John.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you,
John.
Okay,
very
thank you.
shortly.
All right. Well, we're available. Have a good evening. Thank you for your time.
Tom, this was great. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your pushing these things forward, John. 'Cause
And
it's-
Niagara, they're gonna be reaching out to you too. They, I think, won an EPA phase 1 and phase 2 grant.
What's her name?
Amy Fisk.
Amy. Okay, yes.
Yeah, she'll be reaching out to you shortly.
Excellent.
Talk
Thank
to
you
her
very much.
today.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.
Any questions, reach out.
No, it's not that at all. Take that Quincy says.
Okay, item 4 here is the housing policy. John or Tony, how do you want to?
Well, there's been some changes made to it. You got what? There wasn't a different date than August 31st, was there? You said you thought you saw September something. Is there one, where they, August 31st?
That's it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. My own, what, go
You're
ahead.
looking at the revision date. That didn't change, even though I submitted this to you last.
Ah, There we go.
That's your
So
question.
I did put
Yes.
the latest one you sent in here, even though I
Okay.
had, okay, that's where
All
we're
right.
confused.
That's
Like the right one, Tony?
Like, my redlining, I know which is the version.
I'm still having a problem with the housing side of things, of the new single-family housing not being able to be part of this. Because what I saw with what they're doing,
For single family home projects.
yes,
I mean, it's referenced in here, John. It
It's
provides for
ineligible.
10. No, it says, number of rental units shall have less than, and single family homes shall not be less than 10. And up above, it says incentives to attract.
but when I go to number 7, it says ineligible housing projects will not consider housing for new suburban subdivisions. That's a single-family detached housing projects that are not located in with eligible areas as referred to in section 3.
Okay, well, that's why we have a comment period, right?
I'm sorry, a reader is a leader.
So I guess with how they're developing for pre-retirement and retirement with single-family housing, you want to make sure that it's opening up to,
No, it's workforce housing, Ann. That's what they're doing out at Marcy. Single-family development for workforce housing.
well, okay,
It doesn't mean it's one floor, it's just single housing. And that's the crazy thing is they put a pilot in place for that.
right, okay.
I was at a meeting, I saw it, I'm like, where does this come from? So my concern is that, look, in Frankfurt, we have an opportunity on Canal Street for workforce housing, single family, probably 50 units along Canal Street.
You know, and I know that's the new term, workforce housing, so I think it still has to sink in with me, because I'm just used to, starts out eligible income housing now, you know, so,
How about I change that
Okay.
last sentence, John, to projects that are not otherwise primarily directed at workforce housing. You're ineligible unless that's your primary goal, because the motivation behind this can't be for a developer to come in and take our tax benefits to do a 10 or 12 unit subdivision in suburbia that's got no relation to employment, because we're giving him mortgage.
How do we
tax breaks.
justify employment? how do we justify what a workforce?
Guess that would
housing
need to be
is?
defined.
That's the criteria that I try to break out in paragraph 4 under numbers 1 through 9, coming up with, what's the demand, what's the vicinity, what's the parcel.
Would it be a business?
I mean, there's a certain ambiguity. This is more detailed than some other communities. I mean, you're gonna have to, fill in the blanks.
Well, I worry about the people in the other room
What
now.
about where the
So there's qualifying components here in statement
primary-
That's
4.
what I'm trying to come up with, is the
Well, you
qualifying
can't
components.
dictate to a house, to a gentleman selling that his workers must work at the factory across the street. You
No.
can't dictate that.
the primary breadwinner must be employed by,
You can't do
you
that.
can't do that?
No,
Be
how can
employed
you,
by a company within the last 5 years that is
how can you do that?
relocated or?
How can you do that? That's,
Is
that's-
that what we're trying to
What's a new
accomplish
company?
here?
What justifies a new company? Is that 1 year, 5 years?
I don't
Well, that's what
know.
I'm saying. Do you put a number in there saying?
So-
a company
What
has
I'm
been
hearing is,
established?
it's got nothing to do with workforce. You just want to promote housing.
No, I'm trying to narrow it out how we do it. If you try to say you have to be the person who buys it, well, the developer who's developing those 50 houses, he doesn't have them sold before he's building them. Some cases he might. I'm not saying he does. He might have some.
Which is why they're gonna lose the real property tax exemption upon resale. Immediately, that's gonna go because we're bona fide purchaser.
But I think they're gonna be more in it for the sales tax exemptions, the mortgage recording tax, and that initial property tax savings that they can have on the first 2 or 3 years of development is gonna save them money.
Well, I'm looking to, and this is why criteria 8 and 9 were in there, the marketing, the demographic, and the amenities, whether it's high-speed internet. Those tend to be a younger driven workforce component these days.
Well,
If there are criteria you think I'm missing, I'm open to them.
Oh, I'm not, I'm just trying to, like, location and proximity to proposed project to a new employer. We're trying to develop a union tool site. This is 2 blocks away. Bingo, you're in.
We can't put in a percentage, like
How-
50% of the buyers have to be.
Who monitors and looks at that? Oh, my God, I don't think we
Yeah,
can.
Jim, I started making my notes. I had a
I mean, you
percentage in, I
can,
deleted
it's
that
very-
because I had a problem.
That-
Just
invasive.
Yeah, this is.
I mean,
this
you'd have
is
to have
Russia.
applications to,
This is old Chicago. When they built the factory, they built all these row houses and made their employees live there. So they took it out of their check and had them live there. I can't see us doing this.
it's almost like, eligible income housing, whereas you have to fill out the application, then they know your statistics in order to know. I mean, I don't
I'm making.
see that being able
I'm
to be.
I'm
done
I'm
here.
upper level management at XYZ company that moved into here. I want to buy that house, but the tendencies, I gotta fill this. I'm not doing that.
I
Thank
know.
you very much.
You know,
I worked hard, so I'm not in that category.
I guess you would just have to try to understand that there is a level of ambiguity, but yet you'd have to understand that when we're carrying forward benefits to developers such like this, we have to make sure that the spirit of this policy is adhered to. That's all. I mean, you can't
The APO
define
doesn't
every
believe
little
in the
thing.
Spirit of anything. I'm sorry, we've learned
The
that over the
intent-
past 2 days.
The intent and
Well, what is the ABO telling you about this, if anything?
I haven't broached it. I'm just referring it to other things that they've been coming back to us with. If it's not clearly defined, it doesn't exist.
You say it can't be a senior housing. It has to be.
You're gonna wanna build 50 senior houses in those new building lots in Frankfurt. They don't, the developer, that's gonna be tough to find a single family home just strictly for seniors.
Well, it's
I
not
don't-
workforce based.
Pardon?
That's what I'm saying.
No, he just said it.
Eliminate. it, Saying you can't, and you have to be, and then they'll be forced into the workforce.
Once again, you're,
Who's their mom?
or how do we put it in play that way? I don't know the answer.
Cannot be, 55 and older housing. It only applies to. Well,
I mean, listen, if
What applicant? The
If
guy who's buying
they
the house
want-
is going through a bank to buy it from the developer. The developer doesn't care. He's selling the house.
well, I mean, to a degree, if we're carrying forward benefits to them, they should understand that there's an expectation to provide some information or to cooperate to a degree. Now, whether we define how we, what
We
those
have to.
components are, right, and so,
But how is Edge doing it with the new development in Marcy?
That's a good question. I guess we would want
Yeah,
to turn to
I
them
couldn't
and.
tell
I didn't think on
It
that.
didn't make out
They-
anything on the slides, I know. It was baloney, but they got some agreement that they're doing, because one of the Lewis brothers was there and said, what the hell is this?
So why don't we inquire?
I got the edge. It's 1/20th of what we got here. It's one paragraph.
But sometimes less is, honestly,
That's
this is
what I-
great, but sometimes when you're pigeonholing yourself too, it's.
I mean, I could add a monitoring requirement that anybody who's applied for this package has to report to us on an annual basis as to.
The initial line, after that, they can turn around and sell it
Absolutely.
to somebody who doesn't, after this is just the initial buyer.
Except on rental, then there's gonna be a continuing.
Yeah. Which we're okay with the rental side of things. This is a great agreement for rental. Like we're talking for up in Old Forge and for over in Frankfurt too, in another area. But for the strip that they want to do now, maybe we can't do anything. I just know what I saw, and if we can, that'd be great. If we can't, we can't. Right now, it's village-owned property. And they want to sell it to a developer to develop.
If it's such a great commodity, and if we're talking the wealthiest town in this county, tax base wise,
No,
why aren't private developers doing it themselves?
Webb is, that property's owned by the town as well. And they don't really want to turn it over unless they want those buildings built for the school teacher, the police officer, the restaurateur, yeah,
Afford it.
or bringing in younger people so they can teach them their school and that. Right now, they can't do it. They commute from other places and then they quit.
Well, and also too, developers are, it's not easy for them to do anything in Old Forge. I'm sure you're right. So that's probably why they're told.
And the same way, like I think in the town of Frankfurt, what was proposed there, what we're just talking about, nothing is set in stone. I think is perfect in the town of Frankfurt. But in the village, maybe we can't do anything. I just saw what I saw with Edge, and it bothered me that if they can do it there, why aren't we doing this to attract them?
Talk to the.
Well, there
the
it is.
council there.
What do you
And
have?
say, oh, and they're.
It's like Tony said, it's nothing.
And maybe that's
What's-
done for a reason,
What's their-
if you
what's
think of
their
it.
basis on it, though? I mean, have
They
to-
just want to
I mean,
offer it
that's-
for development.
They're just.
Right, so their
Total.
council's Jeff, right? So trust me, if it's slimmed down, that's for a reason. Jeff sounded, he would bulk it up as much as, so if it's slimmed down, that's so that they're not pigeonholing themselves. That's just my opinion.
So it works until you get caught, I suppose, or until you're audited.
In which, after this year, we won't be again for another.
So then you adjust it and.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, so what's, say
There is no pleasure. It's hard to,
plan here.
yeah.
We continue on.
Well, we really need to get into place, I think, a better for the market rate rental. And I think this is good for the market rate rental. Tony,
Well, do you want to start with that, have me delete the residential, and then we continue to, we workshop the residential component of this? You
I
get a
think
project?
that's a good idea. Did you all look at the pilot outlay here too? How it's a little, and a lot of that is set up that way because of the fact there's so much initial investment. There's just, they don't have any money coming in to start for that period of time, and that could be 2 to 3 to 4 years. Then renting them out and get them all stable, so.
So this is just a uniform pilot.
We have one in place
Schedule.
now, but it's not like this.
Okay.
We needed to update it.
This is a more aggressive schedule on the housing.
I mean, we'll have to have a public hearing and do all of that too with
It's
this.
not like it's a business where you just open the door and you're selling.
I'm thinking if you're a
Ice
developer,
cream cones.
100% tax break for 4 years,
This is
that's
gonna take a
Sweet
while to build up a project, to fill it.
Because I would think any project would be stabilized before 4 years, but it all depends.
You have a 60-unit development and you think you'll be full and.
Well, depends on how they construct it, if they construct it in phases or it's being
Well,
stabilized.
we
I
don't do
know.
the, but see, this phases don't really work for us with this.
Right. Good point.
Same way with our, especially for the sales tax.
Mhm.
They play for inflation for 2 years. And you won't see anything built.
You don't know what the economy's
Go
gonna
to 6 years.
Well, we're never gonna know what the economy is, but I mean, the developers willing to take a chance. as an agency to help for the lack of. We've lost over 3% in housing in the past 10 years in Herkimer
I was
County.
just at a meeting this morning with GPNL and two county planning was there and we are. Our census is down 6.39%. 10 years ago, we lost 6%. I asked, 6.3%, 6.79, I'm sorry. Percent population. And I brought up the question, I said, Oneida County lost 2.something%. And I said, is there any demographic there or any the data there saying that did we lose people in Herkimer County to Oneida County? Where did they go? It says they left Herkimer County, but did they go out of state or did they go to Oneida County, which has more rich
Or do they
housing
just
market?
not fill
We
out
don't
the
have,
form?
I said, I told them, I said, we're working on a housing project now. It's the only one that I know of in Herkimer County. Our stock is depleted and the stock that you do have is antiquated and it's going to in-rem process, a lot of it. And so they didn't have that number, but I'd be willing to bet that we lost some people to Oneida County just because they have a better housing.
Proximity,
I know
yeah.
people.
And nobody's
I do
filling
too.
out these government forms
Yeah.
anymore. I shouldn't
And I
say
asked that
nobody,
too.
but
I
a
said,
lot of
what's
people are
skew on that?
are reluctant to fill out your data on these forms.
Mhm.
But
There's another reason they're gonna come after
The
you.
reason they gave is a checks and balances. They do come back with a secondary census, sub it out, and they make tweaks. So irregardless, we did lose a lot of people, and I think some of it, not all of it, but it's got to do because we just don't have the housing. Just needed desperate.
So I like Tony's suggestion that we move ahead, we set a public hearing date. We accept this as written, except for the removal of single-family housing,
I'll have a red line to you tomorrow morning.
and we go ahead with that. That would be my recommendation to the board.
I'd be curious to just get an opinion as to why Edges is so slimmed down. Maybe just an informal opinion. Maybe they have had some other audits and they've learned from them that we have. I don't know.
No, theirs is slimmed down for the single family.
And it's for the single family, not in its entirety.
No,
Okay.
it's just the single family one is this little short slimmed down.
I
version.
understand.
That
Okay.
was at a presentation that we were at when we were talking Marcy and how much property they have there left to utilize.
I understand.
And they-
Okay.
And they said, we want to sell this, but we're gonna give a pilot. Everybody's looking, I'm especially going, what the hell did they just say? And then then I got a hold of Tony and said, something isn't right here.
Okay. I didn't understand that, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
clarification.
Okay, any more? To accept as is.
Subject to.
Subject to Tony's, Mike, Winzak, second, John Serrano, all, any discussion? All in favor, aye? Any opposed? None carries.
We need a motion to set a public hearing.
The motion to set a public hearing at that point. Okay, and any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye. That will hold here because it's for the whole county, right? We don't need to hold it at the county office. We can hold it- No. well,
Hold it out of the county.
I'll charge you for it. Okay. Item 5 is the FY 2022 year budget. We discussed that at the last meeting. I think we're pretty much in agreement on most of it except for some personnel. So we need, I think these next two items will probably go in executive session.
Yes.
And it's project, we can discuss that in private. Okay, we need a motion to go in executive. Scarano, second. Mike, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Carried. You're in executive session.
So,
Hold on.
so before, oh yeah,